Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this video we'll be having a look at how to design a ring in Rhino. So we're going to start off by designing a couple of curves first. Now I'm going to give you a rough idea of how we go about this and then show you a couple of different examples. So I'm going to start by drawing a circle. The circle needs to be approximately the same diameter as we want our end ring to be. So in this case, I'm going to type in a diameter of 18 millimeters because that's what I want my base ring to be. So there we go. We have just a plain old circle. Now I'm going to mark the top and the bottom of my circle, or the quadrants, the top quadrant and the bottom quadrant, so I know where I'm working at. And now I need to design the side profiles. This will be the main shape of my ring, and whatever I draw in my front profile will be my side profiles, or what the ring actually looks like. So I'm going to start by designing a ellipse around this area. The ellipse tool would be better for drawing an ellipse. I'm going to draw an ellipse like this, and an ellipse like that. And I'm going to draw a second one at the bottom here. And that's about the dimensions I want. Now what I want to do is I'm going to maximize that window, and I'm going to drag this area up to about there, and that area down to about there. So that would be the maximum of the inside diameter of my ring. So if I now grab those two shapes, and I say sweep rail, I want to sweep one rail. Rhino will say select the rail, that's my big or main circle, and my cross sections would be the top one and the bottom one, and I hit enter. And now I need to align which part of this profile connects with which part of this profile. Now we need to connect the outside to the outside. And I do that by clicking on the little point and moving it to where I want it to be, which is the top there. And doing exactly the same here, clicking on the point and moving it to the top quadrant and clicking there. Firstly, and secondly, I need to make sure that these arrows are pointing in the right direction so that they align. I can change the direction of the arrow by hovering over the arrow and clicking on it, and I've changed its direction. But they need to be facing in the same direction. Now, once that's done, my alignment of my curves is done. I can hit enter or right click to make it permanent, and I get this little dialog box. Now, Rhino is giving me a preview of what the curve or the ring would look like, but it's only half of what I wanted because I need to make sure that I tick the closed sweep box to make a completed ring. If I say OK now, I end up with a closed valid polysurface. I can select it and go to my Properties tab and say Details, and I'll see valid closed polysurface. So that is a ring we can actually produce and or 3D print if we wanted to, but it's a fairly basic ring. So let's jazz it up a little bit. I'm going to delete that guy, and I'm going to go ahead and tweak these curves a little bit. I'm going to delete that top one, and I'm going to draw an arc over the top section here. That's approximately, let's go approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's approximately 10 millimeters wide, and I'm just going to arc it up that way. And I'm keeping the lowest ends of that arc in line with the top of my internal diameter. I'm going to make a second copy of this guy. I'm going to say copy, and just going to make that 2 millimeters thick. And I'm going to join these two together with my blend arc tool. So I'm going to select that end, and it gets blended for me. And I can tweak this blend if I wanted to by changing these points, but I'm happy with the blend as is. So I hit enter. I do the same thing. I right click to reactivate the tool again, and I click on this one and that one, and it blends the two for me. Now right now they're separated curves. I want one thing, so I select them all and I say join. So now I have my top profile and I have my bottom profile, and I can now do the same sweep rail trick I wanted earlier. So let's do that quickly. I'm going to go ahead and say under my surface tools, sweep one rail. That's my main rail. Top curve, bottom curve, hit enter. Realign my top of my top diameter and the bottom of my bottom curve, and say close sweep. And I have a nice smooth ring that is hollow on the inside. So I'm using or wasting less material with this, so it'll be a lighter ring. So that's one way of doing it. Now I'm going to recycle this curve in a second. So I'm just going to take it and slide it over there. And I'm going to bring up a curve I had earlier. Oh, I designed a little bit earlier so you can see what it actually looks like. So where is that? Let me just say type in show. I seem to have hidden those. So here are two different profiles I've drawn. Now, as you can see, they are slightly more complex. And I'll show you how to design these in a second, but I want to show you what they look like when we sweep our ring or sweep our rails with those. So I'm going to go ahead and say sweep one rail. That's my main rail. My top profile, bottom profile, hit enter. Make sure I align that top quadrant there with the bottom quadrant there, hit enter, and make sure I hit close sweep, and I get that much more intricate shape. Let's do the same with this guy just to show you what they look like. So we're going to go ahead and say sweep one rail, main rail, cross section, hit enter, and align the bottom with the top there. Arrows are pointing in the same direction, so I hit enter and I say closed sweep. There we go. Again, a much more intricate, much more detailed shape. So how do I draw a profile like this? It's reasonably easy. I'm just going to go ahead and hide those guys again. And I'm going to go ahead and hide that guy for the time being. If you want to hide something, the shortcut key is Control H, or alternatively, you can click the little light bulb there that is turned off and it'll hide it for you. So how did I draw those profiles? I start with my main arc again, and I go ahead and draw my ellipse at the top again, like that and like that. My ellipse at the bottom again, like that. Now I'm going to maximize this window so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle just around the little quadrant there. It's not huge, just like medium-sized. And I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to copy that one, copy that circle from this quadrant to that quadrant. And I'm going to go ahead and mark a point on this quadrant and that quadrant as well. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to split this arc with this guy and this guy. And the reason being is I want to find the midpoint between this guy and that guy, between those two circles. So I can now say copy from that midpoint or the center point to that midpoint. Now I know this and this is equally spaced along that arc there. Now there's a couple of different ways of doing that, but that's the quickest and dirtiest way I found of doing it. There are a couple of different ways of doing it. You could array a long curve as well, but usually you don't get exactly the spacing you want and or need. So again, I'm going to go ahead and say I want to split this guy with this, and this, hit enter, and that allows me to draw a second smaller circle here. I'm going to go ahead and say copy around that mid, from that mid to that mid, and I'm going to go ahead and take all of these guys and say mirror over to the opposite side. So now I have all of these curves, and now I can just go ahead and trim off all of the excess stuff I don't actually want. So I'm going to use my trim tool. I'm going to cut there. I actually needed this guy as well. I need that guy's a cutting object as well. And cut all of these excess bits off here. I might go ahead and fast forward this section just while I trim all these excess bits off, not to waste too much of your time. So we're going to go back and select all of those, say join. And now that they're joined, we can go ahead and do our sweep again. So we're going to go ahead and say sweep one rail. That's my rail, cross section, and I hit enter. Again, make sure that we align the top outside edge with the bottom outside edge. And our arrows are pointing in the same direction, and hit enter. Make sure our sweep is closed, and we have a ring. Now I'm going to go ahead and quickly just show you that because I know you're going to ask. So let's see what happens if we don't align those arrows. I'm going to go ahead and say sweep one rail again, main rail, cross section, and I'm going to align the top with the bottom, but I'm going to point the arrows in opposite directions. And if I do that, you'll see the surface will fold in on itself over here. Right there, the surface is folding in on itself. And that is going to cause a non-manifold surface. And that's going to cause an object we can't actually produce and or 3D print. So that's why we avoid doing that. All right, so that's how we might create a ring like that. And now I want to give you two more options for how we might go about drawing a ring. I've pre-prepped some curves for that guy as well. I want to go ahead and hide this. And I'm going to bring up the curves I prepped for that. And that would be a box ring. So what we did was we draw a profile of what we want our ring to look like. Now that would be fairly simple. We have an inside curve, that's the size of our ring, and an outside curve. So to do that, I would probably go ahead and do my inside like that. I go ahead and offset that guy with the thickness of my ring. So let's do 2 millimeter thickness there. And I would draw a line at the top. And that's how wide I want my ring to be. And I probably want it a little bit closer to there. And I would go ahead and do maybe an arc out this way. Not that much arc out that way. Select it and mirror it to the opposite side. And then I probably want to go ahead and trim that off there. Now that's probably not the only way to do it. That's just a quick, no, I'm going to do that a little bit lower just so we can blend these arcs a little bit better. So trim off, select my trim tool, trim off there and there. Delete that, I don't need it anymore. It was just a little drawing aid. And go ahead and say blend arc again. Blend this to that and blend this to that. So that gives me a profile similar to that. That was one side profile. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and draw my side profile. Now you'll see it's almost exactly the same kind of shape as this. It's just a little squashed on the sides. So those are the two main curves I need to draw my main shape. So I'm going to select these two and I'm going to say I want to extrude a valid closed poly surface. There we go. And I'm going to select my side profile. And I drew these, as you can see here, I drew them to overlap exactly at the bottom there. So I'm going to go ahead and select my side profile there. And I'm going to do the same, extrude down this way. And you'll see here, they overlap. Now all I have to do is a Boolean intersect to get the shape I want. So I'm going to go ahead and say Boolean intersect. Select this one, hit enter, select that one, hit enter. And I have the base shape of a ring. Now it's not done yet. I still want to jazz it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle there. I want to split it. I want it to be a C-shaped ring. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude that guy through there and just say Boolean difference this time. Keep this, go with that. So there we go. I wanted that shape, but it's got sharp edges all over. I want to round those out. So I'm just going to select everything and get rid of the curves I don't want. I'm just hiding those for later. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to, under my solid editing tools, I want to fillet edges. And I use a fillet of, let's try a fillet of 1.5 millimeters. And I'm going to go ahead and select everything except, I'm going to select everything except the inside edge there. I want that guy to stay sharp-ish. Select those guys. Oh, you know what? Let's add those guys. I'm going to add those and just do less of a fillet on that. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, yes, please. And just decrease the fillet radius of the one on that. Now, let's see what happens at 1.5. No, that's way too big. So I'm going to Control Z and undo that. I'm going to say fillet. Let's do 1.2. Select everything, hit enter. Here we go, nicely rounded everywhere, so it should be comfortable to wear. And right now, it's still a little boring. Let's add some jewels here and here. Now, the quickest way to add or create a jewel is to draw a polygon, let's say a diamond shape. Let's draw a polygon around here. And however many sides you want, let's do an 8-sided polygon. About that size should do the trick. Let's do that size. We're going to offset this one. Offset curve. Let's make it 1 millimeter smaller. And I'm going to mark the center point of that collection of curves. Draw that guy down. That's going to be my pointy end of my diamond. Draw or select the smaller one and move it up 1. And now there are my curves. I'm going to go ahead and say surface from planar curves. That's my top one. I'm going to say loft, the top curve to the bottom curve. And again, I want to make sure I align corresponding points. So that mid and that mid, hit enter. Okay, that's part of my diamond. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to extrude to point that curve. And that's why I marked the point down here, extrude to that point there. So there we have a diamond shape. So let's join all of those, join. and we're going to move it into position over there, move it up to about there. Does that make me happy? Position-wise, yeah, that looks about good. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to mirror over from here to there. So we have two corresponding points. And now obviously I need to create a cavity in that. So I'm going to select this guy and just make a copy. Copy and paste. I'm going to say Boolean difference. Keep this guy cut with one of those, and be okay with it. So now you can see I've created the little indents for those, but I also have my little diamond shapes to fit inside of that. So that's one way of creating a box ring, another alternative ring. And now let's do one last one. I want to do a pierced ring. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these guys and bring up my pierced ring profiles. Now you remember these. This is what we draw or drew right at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and do my main shape for this. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to sweep one rail. That's my rail, top profile, bottom profile. Again, align that with that and make sure they're pointing in the same direction like that. Hit enter, close the sweep. There we go. That's my base ring. That's what I'm going to work around. And next, I want to draw a curve at the top here. That's just a touch wider than the flat section of my arc there. So I draw a curve like that. So let's just do a curve like that from here to there. That was just the old one. I'm deleting that. Bringing it in to just above the outside or top edge of my ring. And I'm going to do the same for the bottom section profile. So I'm drawing a line from here to here that is slightly narrower than this and slightly below that top section. Now I'm temporarily taking that and hiding it because I want to see this arc again. That arc, the main arc I used to draw my ring. So I'm going to go ahead and say sweep one rail again. That's my main rail. It's my top profile, bottom profile, hit enter. And because it's basic, I'm going to say close sweep, because it's basic, it doesn't need any alignment points. It creates, let me maximize that, it creates a flat ring shape. Now I'm going to use this to create a pattern I want to cut out of my main ring. But I need to flatten this first for my next step, which is going to be flow along surface. So I need to unroll this guy. The tool I need is unroll. So I type in unroll, and the option I want is unroll surface. So I hit enter, and it creates a completely flattened version of this thing I had here. I'm going to go ahead to my top viewport, and I'm going to draw a pattern onto this section. Let's start doing that by drawing one circle here, 2 millimeters wide. Make a copy, 1, 2, copy, 1, 2, copy, 1, 2, copy, 1, 2. All right, and I'm going to make an array of these. Now I could use rectangular array, but because I want it to be a staggered array, I'm just going to do it manually by hand. So I'm going to do a copy again, 1, 2 there, 1, 2 there, 1, 2 there. Because it's a small array and I want to be precise with where I'm placing them, I'm just doing it manually. So I select every second step. If it was a bigger array, I'd bother doing it with your rectangular array tool here, but it's not. I'm just going to do it manually by hand. Let's do move, and I'm moving it over 1.5 millimeters so that they are exactly staggered. Now I go ahead and delete all the excess ones I don't need. This guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Oh, so many extras. All right, so that's what I wanted. And I'm going to grab all of those and I'm going to mirror them over to the opposite side like that. And now to make my life easier, I'm going to go ahead and select those. And I'm going to say, I want to create, let's group them first. Group those guys. And I want to create a surface from planar curves. All right. Hide those. So I wanted these little surfaces. Go ahead and select all of them. And again, group them because otherwise it's going to be chaos later. Group those guys. And now I'm going to take these and I am going to get them arranged along this surface using the flow along surface command. So let's do that. Let's do flow. I'm going to type in flow. Flow along surface is my first option there. So let's select that. And it says, let's do that properly. I'm going to say flow. I have this object selected already. Flow along surface. It says select object to flow. That would be my group there. Hit enter when done. It says select the base surface. Now that is the flattened, unrolled guy here, but it says near a corner. I select that corner, and now it says select target surface near a matching corner. So that would be here. And now you can see those shapes have been transposed from that surface over there onto the original curved surface here. Now, I don't need this unrolled section here anymore. Go ahead and hide that. I also don't need that guy anymore. Hide that. But I do need to mark a central point in my main arc because I'm about to use that point to pull these shapes in and create solids. So I'm going to go ahead and bring back my main ring. Let's just hide all of this other nonsense that popped up in the meantime. Let's hide that as well. And I hide that as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and select all of these guys, and I'm going to say, I want to extrude to point. What do I want to extrude? All of these guys. So I go ahead and select all of these little curves. Now, I could have used the other curves earlier, but then it would create chaos later with too many curves being selected here. If I had the curves and the surfaces, it's just going to save me time if I do it this way. Let's see if I can't drag. Yep, I can drag. Drag to select those surfaces. It's much faster. There we go. So those have all been selected. Oh, I actually deselected those by accident when I dragged. Is that all of them? That is all of them. So I hit enter, and now it's trying to extrude to a point, and that's why I snap to that point that is right in the middle of my ring. It's created this collection of guys that are tapering conically to the central point there. Now, the last thing I'm going to go ahead and do is select those guys, say ungroup, because I want those top surfaces to be loose, and say join. Now, these are all, if I did it right, a valid closed polysurface. That means I can now Boolean difference them out of my main ring to have a pierced ring, or a ring with a collection of holes through it. So let's try to do that. Usually you can try to do all of them at the same time, but it's going to take quite a few seconds to do a Boolean operation that's that complex. So let's say Boolean difference, main ring, and let's do a few of them. Yep, that works. Boolean difference, let's do a few more. You cut with you. Again, you cut with you guys. It's a bit more of a complex Boolean process, so it takes a little bit longer. You cut with you guys. Let's try and push. Boolean fail. It was a little bit too complex. I selected too many of them at the same time, and then that happens, and your Boolean fails. So let's just do a smaller amount of them at the same time. You with you guys. And then the last few at the top there. Boolean fail. Let's try that again by hand, shall we? We have doubles here. I accidentally made an extra set. That is entirely my fault. I forgot to delete the extra set. All right. Also, we don't need that guy. Let's do Boolean difference. Keep you, cut with you. And there we go. So we have our ring with this textured pattern cutting through it, also known as a pierced ring. All right, so let's have a look quickly. The reason why our Boolean failed is because I had duplicates at the top there, and I'll show you that quickly. I'm going to go ahead and just hide these guys, Control H. The reason why that Boolean failed is because I should have deleted one of these sets at the top there, or at the top there. I accidentally created duplicates. So that's one thing you could accidentally do. I'm going to go ahead and say ungroup those, and this is what it should look like. Delete those guys. And delete those guys. So one should be blank at the top there because these will align with where those other ones used to be. All right, so that is how we create a pierced ring. So that's 4 possible options for creating a more interesting ring. I hope that's helpful, and I hope you have fun designing rings. Have a good one.